You're listening to the Westminster-Canterbury Tales podcast, creating community to foster joy and well-being. Thanks for listening.
Welcome, this is Ben Fraser, and we have Westminster-Canterbury on the Bay podcast today, Tell Me a Story. And we have a special guest, Stuart Gordon, who lives here and has for a while. And Stuart, we're just so delighted you can be here. You've lived such a creative and unusual life, and we want to hear about it. And we want to hear about some of your activities. I know, without giving everything away, you lived in Spain for a while, and you also grew up in New York and moved here. You're a lawyer. You're a politician. You ran for office, I know. So you got a lot of stuff that you can talk about, and I'm looking forward to hearing. But I think just so everybody can sort of know who you are, if you could just give us a introduction to your life, and I'll interrupt once in a while and talk to you about find out some other things that you may not give us.
Fine. It's, of course, a little sobering to know that I can, in 10 minutes, tell you my life, but we'll begin. I was born in Hoboken, New Jersey. When I was 2 years old, my family moved to Brooklyn. My brother was born. He's 17 months younger than I am. Since then, he's deceased. I lived there my entire life in a fourth floor walk-up and shared the same fold-out couch with my brother until I got married. I went to Brooklyn College, which I was fortunate enough to do because it was free. I went to Brooklyn Law School, graduated, became a lawyer, practiced as a trial lawyer in New York for about 15 years. I ran for state assemblyman while there. Besides running for assemblyman, I created, along with three other gentlemen, a public corporation which traded over the market and built houses, owned a finance company, and then decided it was time to kind of relax and sold everything, went off to Spain with my family and 2 dogs, 2 cats, and lived in Spain for 2 years, and then decided to come back here. One of the reasons I came to Virginia was because I didn't have to take the bar examination again. They have reciprocity with New York, so that was a big incentive. I just didn't want to go back to the rat race of New York. I got a job with a man who at that time I had no idea who he was, but it was Henry Howell, who was running for governor of the state of Virginia. I was also in New York. I was special assistant to Robert Kennedy, and when he was a senator, and I worked for Henry for about 2 years, and then got involved starting with the legal clinics. I was the first lawyer in Virginia to advertise. Actually got indicted because of it, which is an interesting story. Became very successful, retired at the age of 59, and started a finance company which basically lends money to a lot of people who are unable to go to banks, mostly African Americans. Fortunate enough, I married 2 super duper women. My first one I met in Brooklyn, and when she was 13 or 14 years old, and I was 17, and we spent the next 50 some odd years together. And then she passed away of cancer, and then I married, which everybody knows, Lola. I mean, she's probably much more popular here than I am. And
better looking, I might say.
Oh, absolutely. And just for the record, Roy is acknowledging that she's much better known than I am.
It's got to be on the record.
This is one of the interviews that Roy will speak up once in a while, too, and ask you some questions.
And I ran that for several years. So I have 3 children, a son who was a lawyer but hated every minute of it, so he became a teacher. And then I have a daughter who's a teacher and started a school, one of the Goddard schools. And then I have another daughter who is an LD teacher. And I now live in Westminster and having a good time.
Yeah, you even said it right, Westminster.
Right. Well, they told me to practice this several times. That it's a crime not to say it properly.
Yeah, well, that's true. Tell us, why did you decide to go into law? What was the attraction?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, it was a choice between either becoming a social studies teacher or a lawyer. And I probably figured out there were two reasons why I went. Number one, I was pretty aggressive. So being an aggressive person, it just didn't fit in with being a social studies teacher. And I felt that it would be more appropriate to be a lawyer being aggressive. And the second was the pay was better.
Well, I'm so glad that aggression got out, and now you're just a gentle soul.
Yes.
Oh, maybe that didn't happen.
No.
Why are you aggressive? Why that?
Why? I don't know. I have a feeling it's probably innate. My mother was that way. She was much. I mean, she was the matriarch of the family. She ran the family. All she had to do was give me, I don't think she ever hit me in my entire life. All she had to do was give me a look, and I knew that I had better shape up or else. And I think I probably inherited some of that from her.
Okay. So you went to law school, graduated, 12th in your class or something like that? Pretty
12th.
high. That's great. Did you enjoy law school?
Yes. I was not a particularly good student in college. I basically felt it was the necessary evil to get to law school, and so I was not a particularly good student. But in law school, I really shaped up, and I enjoyed it, and I did well, and I felt as if I was very successful in law school.
So you graduated from law school, and did you go work with another company, or did you start your own, or what happened there?
Upon graduating from law school, I joined a law firm that was a trial law firm, and I did some trial work, and then I did a lot more trial work. And then after about 3 or 4 years, I went into partnership with someone, and we had a partnership for several years. And that's the time I decided I wanted to get involved in politics, and I became a local Democratic leader. And then I ran for state assemblyman for the state of New York.
I think we're talking about why you were attracted to law school, and then why you were attracted to politics.
Somehow there was this Don Quixote part of me that I always felt I could change the world. And so I got involved in politics, and there were always a few causes. I was always involved in animal rights causes and the environment, even back then, and consumer rights. And I thought, that I could change the world if I got elected.
Now, you also worked with Robert Kennedy. You mentioned that. When was that? When was that in the process?
I ran for state assemblyman, and it was a very heavily Republican district, and they really didn't expect me to win. And I was very fortunate, and I came in. I lost by 1,000 votes, and so to some degree, I was kind of, like an accepted part of the Democratic Party at that point, even though I had lost. And the leader, Jack English, at that point called me in, and he said to me, "Would you like to work for Bobby Kennedy?" And I said, "Of course." And he said, "There's no money involved, but it's a great privilege." And I said, "Yeah, it would be great." And he said, "Well, you'll be the representative for Bobby Kennedy for Long Island, New York." And I accepted the position, and it was truly an unbelievable experience. I mean, when you pick up a phone and you call the president of Hofstra University, and you get on the phone and you say, "This is Stuart Gordon," and the secretary says, "Yeah." And then you say, I'm from Senator Kennedy's office. And she says, hold on, I'll get you the president. It makes a difference.
That's right.
Yes,
That's right.
so.
What was he like? Can you tell us a little bit about him?
He was really a warm, friendly person. Every Christmas, he would have a little event down at Rockefeller Center. And he rented out all of Rockefeller Center, and we would go ice skating. There would be maybe 100, 150 people, and we'd all go ice skating, and he would go ice skating, and Ethel was there, and he would, he would talk to you, and he was really just a really warm person. As a matter of fact, one time, to show you how tolerant he was, one time he came to Long Island, and he came in, and I wanted a picture with him, and I walked up to him, and I said, Senator Kennedy, can I have a picture? He said, of course, Stuart, yes. And the person who took the picture forgot to take the cover off the lens. So I had to go back a second time and say, Senator, there was kind of a mix-up, and the guy took a picture the second time, and he forgot to advance the... So by that time, it was impossible. But he was very tolerant. It wasn't like, indicated that she...
Once and done.
Let's move on. And so I always found him to be really a very, very warm and friendly person.
I think the image that I had of him living during that time as well is that he was very smart and knowledgeable. In fact, of the Kennedys, maybe the smartest. Was he? How was he?
My feeling was that he was better than Jack Kennedy, that he was smarter than Jack Kennedy. And I think there was an empathy in him that for the poor, for the downtrodden, that John did not have. I mean, John exhibited some of that, but I think Bobby, it was really a sincere feeling that he was going to somehow change the world.
More genuine in that way.
Yeah.
Wow. Anything else? Can you have any other incidents that you could tell us about that? Apparently you knew him on a first-name basis.
Well, I mean, I guess he knew, I don't know. He was coming to Long Island. They may have said, Stuart Gordon is your representative, so if he's there, make sure you say Stuart. I don't know whether, but we, I met him numerous times, and, we had some relationship.
Well, good. So you were involved in politics. You ran for office. You worked with represented, apparently, Robert Kennedy. And you had your own law firm.
Yeah. And I, along with two other gentlemen, decided that we would create a public company and sold shares of stock and became a public corporation and traded over what they call the pink sheets.
Okay.
And we traded.
How did that come about? Why was that?
I just, one day, a very good friend of mine had gone public with a really solid big company. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, gee, it's really not as difficult as you think. Well, it is very difficult. And I thought it would be a great idea, and I got two other gentlemen to join with me, and the three of us created this company, and we sold, now this is 1968, 69, 70, and we sold $400,000 worth of stock and traded in the stock market.
Wow.
So it's a very exciting business.
So you recommend just about anybody get into that because it's so fun and so exciting and easy to get into?
Yeah. Actually, it's a real learning experience. I knew nothing about the stock market, and I learned a great deal.
Okay. How long were you a lawyer in New York then? How long did that take
15
place?
years.
15 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you decided Spain. So there's a story there. How did Spain come in the picture? Yeah.
Well, what happened is I was working 7 days a week, like 15 hours a day between the law practice, the public company, politics, and everything else. And I was really run down. And I won a trip to Italy. And I didn't want to go. because I didn't have the time, and my mother forced me to go. And so my wife and I went off to Italy. And for the first time in my life, I realized that men actually sit for 2 hours and have lunch, that they don't grab a sandwich standing at their desk. And I said to my wife, we're still, we're young and all, but how about we just kind of sell everything and just move off to Europe? And she said, yeah, let's do it. And so we went home.
And wait, what did your mom think of that?
She thought we were crazy. So did everybody think we were totally crazy,
But your wife was going along with this.
Oh, she thought it was a great idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, we were really, we lived in a big house. I had an orange Corvette.
Oh, my.
I wore
an orange Corvette. I just can't see you in that. That's amazing.
You had to see me. I had gold chains and the whole bit. And we just all went off to, coming back from Italy, her father said, well, if you really ever want to do that, it's cheaper to live in Spain than it is in Italy. So what you ought to think about that? And the only condition was that we had to find a school for the kids. And it just turned out that there was a school, a British school, that was owned by, hard to believe, 2 New Yorkers. And we became very good friends with them. We flew over. We sold the house, the cars, the public company, everything.
Was it hard to let go of that orange Corvette?
Yeah. had to settle for a white Seat, which is a little car.
So you were what, in your 40s?
30s.
30s when you did this?
Late 30s. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you had 3 kids.
3 kids.
2 cats.
2 dogs.
2 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And all you went to Spain.
Yep. Packed up everything and sold everything except for the basic things of our life.
Yeah.
And went off to Spain and lived on the Costa del Sol for 2 years in a house that was on the beach. Every morning I would jog for an hour, come back, and our cleaning girl, and she wasn't more than a cleaning girl, she actually became a very close friend of ours. Mm-hmm. She would make breakfast. And,
oh, wow.
We'd have breakfast and off, and my kids were going off to school, and then I would go into town and do basically look for some foreigners and sit around and drink coffee and relax. And
you drink coffee out of those little cups, or they have big cups there?
They're little espresso cups, and make sure it takes 2 hours.
I never could figure out those cups when I traveled. Why that little thing? But some people love it.
The interesting part is that while I'm there was this Spanish lawyer came to me, and he said to me, Stu, I would love you to kind of work with me. And I said to him, Emilio, my Spanish is terrible. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a license to practice law in Spain, and I don't want to get into any trouble. And he said, no, I want you to be kind of the front man, because Spanish lawyers are really not trusted by the Brits or by the Americans when they're buying property, and those are the 2 big buyers in Spain. So I said, well, I still don't want to get into trouble. He said, well, don't worry, my father's head of the secret police, because this was those days of Franco. Right. So he said, just show up and talk to the people, and I'll share my fees with you. So I would meet the people in the coffee shop and work out whatever their problem was, and then go back to him, and he would draw the documents.
Wow. You wine them and dine them, and then you got paid for it. So on your 2-year sabbatical, you were making some money in Spain.
Yeah.
So why, before we ask why did you leave, which I'm coming to, a little bit more about what life was like there.
In Spain?
Did the family like it? Did your wife like it?
My children absolutely loved it. I mean, they were opposed to it initially, to go to Spain, but all of a sudden, you're in a British school. They were learning Latin, Spanish, French. They had to write an essay. My son had to write an essay every night. It wasn't, a once a week proposition.
Right.
They all, when they came back, could speak Spanish pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
we loved it because, when I say I worked with Emilio, I mean, that was like maybe an hour every 2 weeks. Wasn't the hectic life of an American lawyer.
So did you go fishing there or swimming? Or
we lived on the beach, so
yeah.
I went swimming every day. We traveled. We went to England. We went to Germany. We went to France. We went to Austria. We traveled all over the place.
So my guess is after 2 years, the money ran out.
Actually, the money didn't run out, but you know what the problem was that you start to say, there's really no future here.
Yeah.
And you're in your late 30s, and you say to yourself, well, there's just no way I can do this. What's it going to be when I'm 45 or 50?
Yeah.
Am I? If Emilio dies, I don't have any kind of income at all. Even though his income, the money I made from him was pretty small.
Right.
But there was just, and you still are a foreigner. You're an extranjero. You're just not part of that society. At night you would drink, you'd go to the bars and you'd drink and you'd have fun, but you didn't feel as if you were building anything. Right. So after the 2 years, we just felt it was necessary to come home.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with your Robert F. Kennedy kind of.
No.
I don't know if it's F, but Robert Kennedy sort of background. Okay, so how did that decision come about?
Well, both Linda, my first wife, and I decided to come home. We flew home. My mother had gotten divorced from my father, and she was remarrying. And so we came home for the wedding. It just worked out at that time. We flew home, and we said, well, my wife wanted to move to Virginia. I wanted to move to Denver. And she said, well, look, let's just go down to Virginia for a weekend while you're here and see what it's like. And I said, okay, fine, we'll go down. And she met a lawyer while we were down here. And he said to her, how long has your husband been practicing law? And she said, well, 15 years. And he said, New York and Virginia have reciprocity. He does not have to take the bar exam. And that was enough.
that was a deal breaker right there, or a deal maker, one or the other.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
At that point, I decided, okay, we'll come to Virginia, and we flew in from Spain. She flew in, found a little home, and I took care of the kids and kind of organized everything to get back. And we flew home, and we bought a house, but the condition was we had 30 days in which for me to find a job.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't find a job. And then finally, I just walked in one day. I had no idea who Henry Howell was. I walked into his law firm, sat down, and he looked down and he said, oh, you worked for Bobby Kennedy. And I didn't know that Henry was running for governor and he was a Democrat. And he talked to me for 2 hours about Bobby Kennedy. I went home and I said to me, I don't think I got this job because the man wasn't interested in me. He was interested in Bobby Kennedy. And the next morning he called up and he said, you have the job, come in. I want you to handle my part of the law practice while I'm running for governor. And I said, this man's running for governor?
You didn't want to tell him you didn't know
that. And so I got the job and everything worked out very well.
Yeah.
Very
well. What kind of law practice did he have?
Henry was strictly trial.
Trial.
So the first year, I was kind of thrown in because they'd say to me, here you got 20 cases, go try them. Wow. It's like, oh my God, and so I'd be running around trying cases, or, we have this case in the Fourth Circuit. We go out in Richmond and argue the case in the Fourth Circuit. I mean, they had a really high-level law practice, trial practice, and I was a beneficiary of it. I learned a great deal from Henry and Guy Doherty, and then I went out on my own and started my own law.
So you worked for him for what?
About 3 years.
3 years. Did he? Was he governor? Did he?
No.
He lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he came back, and it was like a little bit of a difficulty because all the clients were going back and they didn't know whether to come to me or to go to him. And so it was a little bit, and I had decided that it was time to really move on. Sure,
and sometime it served its purpose. You
Right.
got in transition. So then you started out on your own at that point?
Well, I didn't know quite what to do, and I was, Linda and I had been talking about me looking for a job in another firm or doing something else, and I was driving down Virginia Beach Boulevard, and I looked up, and there was a sign there that said the Legal Clinic of Wade Bettis, and I knew Wade, and she said, well, why don't you go up and talk to Wade and see if he needs a partner or something like that. And I walked in, and Wade said, I'm very, very successful, Stu. The thing is just taken off because it was a legal clinic. Mm-hmm. So we were doing wills for $25 when lawyers were doing them for $200. We were doing closings for $100 because everything was computerized.
Right.
And so they said to me, I was talking to him, and he said, we're doing really, really well, except my wife wants to go back to Portland. And so he said, if you'll write me a check for all of the equipment in this place, it's your law practice.
Wow.
So I wrote him a check, and boom, it became unbelievably successful. I had 6 offices throughout Tidewater. Mm-hmm. I was the first lawyer to advertise. I used to take full-page ads in the newspaper. I was on TV. I had to be careful on Saturdays to shave because I'd hand my credit card when I went to a store, and people say, "Oh, you're the lawyer," because I was the only person who was advertising in those days. As a matter of fact, because of it, the Commonwealth attorney, Andre Evans, I remember. He was a nice person, but he called me up and he said to me, there's a Virginia law that says you're not allowed to advertise for wills and divorces. I said, yeah, I know, but the Supreme Court says I can. And he said, well, I don't care what the Supreme Court says. Virginia says you can't. So about a month later, he calls me up and he says, I've just had you indicted for violation of those 2 statutes.
Whoa.
So the newspapers, being in favor of freedom of speech and everything, decided to really take it up as a cause. As a matter of fact, the Virginian Pilot took my ads and put them on the editorial page, which by that time now, it like quadrupled the number of clients who were coming through the door. I mean, we used to give out little numbers to people. We had so many clients, we'd give numbers, like a bakery. Mm-hmm. You had number 14 on a will, and go. And it was really, really, and very, very successful. And I had the Attorney General of Virginia represent me. I had 3 people from the ACLU represent me, and 2 local attorneys represent me. So on the day of court, I walked in with 6 or 7 lawyers, and Andre Evans looked and said, can we have a continuance? And I remember the judge looking down and saying, there's no continuance. It's you try it or I dismiss it. And he said, well, I'm not really ready. And he said, then it's dismissed. And that was it.
And you took them all out for a great breakfast or something.
They were really.
Oh, that's a great story. I love it. Yeah. So you were Stu the Hammer Gordon, right?
I know him very well. I don't want to be put in the same category as Lowell.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing. So, you stayed in that practice for a while, but then you branched out after that.
What happened is I realized that in Virginia, unlike New York, you can foreclose on a person's property pretty quickly. So the credit is, you can, it's funny, it takes you a month to it's not funny, it's really sad in some ways. It takes 30 days to evict a person from who has a lease.
Right.
It takes you 2 weeks to take their property away in a foreclosure.
Oh, wow.
And given that, some people would, I said, gee, this is really an interesting area where you can, not that I wanted to take anybody's property, but I knew I could be secure. And so I started a little company that loaned money to people who couldn't get money from banks, mostly African Americans. And over the years, it developed into an enormous company. And the interesting part is, despite the fact that, I made money, most of these guys today have become exceedingly wealthy. And
friends.
And friends.
Yeah.
I have one, as a matter of fact, one of them invited me to his wedding. And I remember Clyde getting up, and it was Lola and I, and there were 150 African Americans. So it was just Lola and I at this wedding. And the guy said, I want to thank my father, and he points to his father for all he did for me. And then he turned and he said, I want to thank my white father. Which the tears started running down my face because
great.
He had come to me as some kid who really didn't have anything, and turned out that now he owns, I think, 4 or 5 apartment houses.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, he drives a Bentley.
Oh my goodness.
and he actually drove the Bentley when Lola and I got married.
Oh, really?
I said to him, "Can I borrow your Bentley to pick up the guests at who are flying in for the wedding?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh no," he says, "I will be the chauffeur." So here's this guy who owns the Bentley, and he's dressed up in a white dinner jacket, and for 2 days he drove all my people, all the guys around.
Man.
It was just really spectacular.
That's great.
But I have a lot of these guys who call me up. I mean, I get probably 15 or 20 little messages on Father's Day. From these guys.
Well, you've helped a lot of people.
Yeah, they've made a lot of money.
And so that's what a wonderful thing to be able to think back on, that you got most people don't think highly of lawyers.
No, absolutely.
I would ask you what your favorite lawyer joke is, but since you're a lawyer, I better not. But then here you've found a way to help primarily a minority community in our world, and get loans where they wouldn't be able to get loans anywhere else, and to do well and to prosper, and
you know what the part is, I became very educated as a result. Too many times you stereotype in a whole segment of our community.
We do.
And I found these guys are the hardest working. I will call at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'll say, "Hey, Joe, where are you?" "Well, I've been down at at Lowe's for the last 2 hours picking up lumber so that I can get started in the morning." It's not like I'm showing up at 11 o'clock, and it's hard work, and and I look around, and I can honestly say, in my mind, I know of 20, maybe 25 individuals who today are independently wealthy. I have one woman who I was talking to, Orna, the other day, and she said to me, "Stuart, I just wanted to thank you for everything you did for me." I said, "Well, it wasn't totally out of, part of it is because I like you, but part of it is I'm also making money." So, but she said to me, "I now, because of you, own 27 buildings."
Whoa.
Totally free and clear. She says, "I never have to work again the rest of my life." And I said, "Wow."
Yeah. So that's a wonderful, what a great tribute that is to your creativity and your kindness.
Yeah. The big joke among the African American clients is that Stuart will never die because there are so many African Americans praying for him to continue to live.
Well, you and I are friends. I
Sure.
think it's fair to say that, and we've met here, and. There's scholars, and I told you this earlier today, there's scholars and there's intellectuals. And scholars are the guys that write the funny papers that you have to have all the footnotes on and all that sort of stuff. But an intellectual is somebody who knows all that stuff that the scholars know, but they don't write all those papers. They write other things that are more practical and more useful. And I see you as an intellectual, someone who is familiar with philosophy and literacy, literature, and those kinds of. Of course, you married up.
Yes, I did.
Somebody with a PhD and in literature and knows German, I believe.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first time when Lola and I were going out, when I flew down to Atlanta, because we met on.
You met online.
We met
tell
online.
us that story. Tell us that story.
Well, what happened was my first wife, who I'd been married to for some 50 years and had gone with like for 56 years. She passed away, and I was really depressed. And I knew her sister, who was about 4 years younger than her, and her sister called me. She would call me every Saturday and say, "How you doing, Stu?" And I would say, "Oh, well, you know." And then one Saturday she called me up and she said to me, "How tall are you, Stu?" And I said, 5'9". And she said, "And you weigh 170, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I'm going to tell you, Stuart, if you're not on Match.com by tomorrow morning, I'm putting you on because I have a picture of you." So I said, "Okay, Naomi."
So this is her sister.
I swear, it was Linda's sister.
It was encouraging you to.
So I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And I put it on.
That's a really kind way to say that to you. To say that, hey, you need to move on now.
Absolutely.
We know you loved my sister, but
that's the important thing. It was coming from her sister. It wasn't coming from a third person.
Right.
The sister saying,
it's time.
Even though we loved Linda, even though you loved her very much, it was time to move on. And it was just really, and so I put a picture on of me, and you always use these pseudonyms. You don't use your own name on this, so I picked out some philosopher, Spinoza, and somebody said, "Well, what'll happen in that case? Either you'll get women who think it's an Italian ice cream, and those you can immediately discard, or those who know who Spinoza is, and you'll talk to them."
Yeah.
So, and I had just come back from Wyoming, having seen actually Linda's sister, Naomi, the one who talked to me. And I had ridden a horse, and there was me with a cowboy hat, with a real attitude look, standing next to a white horse. And I put it on there. And Lola and I put down that I would only travel 50 miles. That was my max. Yeah. She put down she would travel 3,000 miles. So,
whoa.
And so what happened is my name popped up as one of her possibilities. She saw the horse, and she said, "Oh my God!" And she knew who Spinoza was, and she says, "Here's a lawyer who knows who Spinoza rides a horse." So she wrote to me, and she said, "I'm sure there are thousands of women who are looking." She actually wrote this. "I'm sure there are loads of women who are looking to go out with you, but would you please look at my resume?" And I looked at this resume and I said, "Oh my God, this woman speaks 3 languages. She's PhD, this. So I flew down to Atlanta.
You broke your rule.
Yep.
You're a lawyer too.
Exactly.
And how long did it take for you to lasso her?
Actually, the funny thing is, as soon as I went down there, I said, because I had gone out with some women before that.
Sure.
And I met Lola, and it was like, this woman is just like, I can't believe it. I mean, she's funny, she smiles, she's intelligent. I mean, the funny thing, and we were talking about Nietzsche, who was a German philosopher, and she said to me, "Well, did you read him in the German or the English?" I could barely understand him in the English, so don't even start with the German. But I invited her back up to come to Virginia. 2 weeks later, and I said, there's an upstairs bedroom.
Sure.
There's a lock on the door, so don't worry, you can come to Virginia. And she came, and she spent 3 days. I took her to Williamsburg, and we traveled, and we went to the opera and all those kinds of things.
Sure.
We saw Don Juan, which is appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
And
she didn't see any similarities.
And And then I said to her, before she left, I said, what are you doing for the next 12 months? And she said, why? I said, if you're ready, we'll go on a vacation every single month for the next 12 months.
Wow.
And she said, really? And I said, yeah. And she said, like what? And I said, well, are you ready? We'll go snowmobiling throughout Canada next month if you're ready to go start. And she said, I'm ready. That was it.
Where'd you go in Canada?
So we went up to Quebec.
Yeah.
And we snowmobiled there. And then the next month we went to Argentina and we rode with the gauchos.
Yep.
And then the month after that we went to New York and took a helicopter ride over to New York City. The month after that, and then finally we went to Austria, which is where she went to school. But there's a restaurant there that is an exclusive restaurant, and she could never afford to have gone there when she was going to school. And what we said is, I said to her, I'm going to take you there. And we had this whole meal, and at the end of the meal, the waiter came out with one of these silver trays, and he said to her, I have this for you, madam. And she said, I already had dessert. Thank you very much, but I appreciate it. And he said, no, I think you want this dessert. And he opened it up, and there was an engagement ring.
Yeah.
So,
hey, you can do a movie on that. That's a great line for that's funny. That's I mean, more than funny, it's endearing. Yeah.
And Lola has been absolutely, I mean, anybody who knows Lola knows that I got a super deal.
Yep, you did, and she did too. Well, anything else advice you want to pass on, or anything you want to say?
Not really. I want to just thank you for the opportunity to talk, and I just wanted to just one point, you and I have been friends now probably 3 years.
Yeah.
And it started off where I walked up and I said, I don't agree with you.
You never have yet.
But we have become really good friends.
Yes, we have.
And over those 3 years, we've had numerous conversations, and I think we've become even philosophically closer and understand. I understand more of your philosophy. You understand more of mine, and I think I've become a lot more enriched as a result of our relationship.
I think we both changed a little bit.
Yeah,
and I'm glad you pointed that out, because we live in an age where people are great at arguing but not agreeing or even listening to one another or hearing one another or carrying on the conversation. It's more like two monologues yelling at each other.
Exactly.
And yet you and I represent a different way of communicating and talking and dialoguing. And that is, we don't talk so much just to win. We talk to learn.
Exactly.
And I think that's healthy, and something I probably need to do more with other people in my life as well. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you agreed to this podcast, and we look forward to maybe having some more.
Well, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Westminster-Canterbury Tales podcast. Thank you for listening.